had Zach, Dave, and Nick coming back in here. And you can see as the fifth wheel, I need to get out of here because this does not look good on the camera. So I will let you guys go. AI in industry. I'm excited for this.
Welcome. Thank you so much, Derek, for taking us to this panel. So super excited to have kind of some industry folks now kind of complement what we've heard from brands about this very topic. So welcome, Zach, Nick, and Dave.
Great. Thank you.
Good to see you.
Excellent. And welcome back, I guess, Nick. Great
to
see you.
say good to be back.
Exactly. So maybe spend a few minutes just introducing yourselves. I mean, you guys are all kind of industry legends in various ways, but would love for you to spend a few minutes introducing yourselves. I've been a big follower, certainly of, I mean, Dave I kind of work with, but certainly of Nick's and Zach's throughout the years. So Zach, you first. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you've been up to in the past and more recently.
Sure. Good to be with you today. So I'm Zach Zalowitz. I'm a principal of order management at Perficient. We're a global digital consultancy. Spent most of my career at the intersection of commerce and supply chain. Just came from industry. I led digital tech at Foot Locker globally. And so everything left of the buy button. But most of my career has been at software companies for order management or independent advisory prior to Foot Locker. And largely in retail. So done a lot of hands-on implementations in the space over the last 15, 16 years.
That's fantastic. You know a thing or two about how to optimize the inventory to customer. So Dave.
Yep. So thanks for the opportunity. Dave Shaffer. I'm a co-founder along with Mo and John Shao of Pipe 17, Chief Product Officer. My prior background has been probably 15 years in the integration space, so the nitty-gritty details of connecting up systems, and we're building a solution to make commerce, order operations faster, simpler, easier, and AI is a super relevant topic for that one for sure.
That's fantastic. And Nick, I think
I guess I jumped.
But say one word in case people.
Yeah, well, I was so excited to jump in before. I don't think I introduced myself, but I've basically spent my career building communities and figuring out how to commercialize them. So I'll leave it at that.
That's fantastic. Great. So with that, let's kick off. So, Zach, are you excited about AI and its impact in this commerce domain? And if so, why?
Yeah, very, very excited about the application of AI. In the OM space, at least, there was a little bit of machine learning around order routing, right, which is kind of a core function of an OM. What I'm excited about is and we talked about this, I was listening and taking some notes earlier in the past hour, it's like getting rid of repetitive and automated tasks. A lot of brands, I think, are still plagued with how many times they have to touch an order, not having line of sight into exceptions, not having something automatically mitigate those. Moreover, proactively getting ahead of them from happening in the first place. That's the imminent wave. That's what I'm most excited about. The things you were talking about with Pippin, for example, in natural language, speaking to a system and saying like what you want to affect on business terms and in business speak. That's handing a lot more control to business users. And typically in the OM space, at least, it's been a lot of technical work to be able to do that, and which is slows you down. And so you're less agile in responding to those exceptions that happen. And so I'm most excited about that, just killing off a lot of touches on orders. And really the point there, Mo and team, is not a lot of brands attribute that cost to profitability on an order, right? You look at the shipping cost, of course, the labor cost, of course, but like attributing and a lack of profitability is how many times call center rep has to touch it, how many times operations team have to. That's what I'm most excited about solving. It's quantifiable and it's imminent. And now the technology like yours is there to go do that.
That's fantastic, Zach. So I guess look beyond the label. That's the message on that. So Nick, you did an amazing job kind of painting the big picture. But you talk to a lot of brands and retailers. what do you hear from them, and where do you feel the excitement is, both for you and for them?
I think that help. I think that people are beginning to embrace, in what Rick and I are really talking about is the age of efficiency, what efficiency means. And as a person who loves math, I think that math doesn't lie. And I think Zach's point about order routing, that a machine can do all of the math far faster than we can, and math doesn't lie. And I think that really, if you were to boil it down to one thing that AI today affords us, is the ability to do far more computing in math than ever before. And so rather than writing a formula in a spreadsheet or creating an algorithm on your own, you can speak into a Google Doc, and you can then copy and paste into Claude or ChatGPT, and you can get a result. And then if you're good, and knowledge equals frequency over time, so the more you do it, the better you'll be at prompting and conversating with the algorithm, you can get a result that gives you a far better chance of success. And so I think that people are most excited about, and to speak to some of the things that Sue's talked about, and I think they're a wonderful group of brands, and they've done an amazing job, but you can't just add zeros. And as you acquire businesses and you look for efficiencies and you look for opportunities, generative AI cannot just help with process improvement. It can help with creative. It can help with all of these mundane tasks that have built up over time and need to be done for a business to run, just to run, not even run efficiently. So I think that the thing that most excites people is access, efficiency, and the ability to compete with the big guys by having the same resources at their disposal as others.
That's actually a really, really interesting point, because we had Kelly Gage from Commerce Tools on episode 1, and as a little project, 10 minutes evening before the webinar, he got Claude to build him a brand, which is like, I want some work gear, but I want a Midwest feel, but I want it to look professional. Create the brand for me and the website, and then hey.
Yeah. So when I had my challenges, technological challenges, getting on, I love Kelly and think he's such an amazing person, and he writes so many incredible insights. But I want to make a joke that said, I was going to reach out to Kelly for a job at Axel, and I forget what it was called, but yeah, it was great. It was really great. He created a website and a brand. So think about someone that was really dedicated to what they could do to compete.
Exactly. So Dave, AI, why are you excited?
Yeah. So I think it's a really interesting discussion. First, I mean, I loved hearing all the comments so far. Like you, Nick, I've taken some notes. I think you said that. Zach, you said you were taking notes. So I'm kind of a pragmatist, to be honest. So I feel like the first step is to figure out where the highest value impact is when technologies like this emerge. And, like maybe many people, I've been around long enough to be, around for the .com, run up, and then the, run down maybe. And, what came out of that eventually was amazing advances. But figuring it out in real time, I think, is a really interesting challenge. And I think it's something that right now everybody is going through, literally everybody. The conversation earlier about, I think it was Danielle who talked about hiring for creativity and curiosity and things like that. And I don't think you can be behind the curve on AI very far right now, because generative AI in particular is so brand new. So it's really an opportunity for people to leverage in their careers at this point. I mean, longer term, there are impacts, I think, on different jobs that people do, but the short-term opportunity is for everybody to figure out how to leverage this for growth and productivity. So anyway, so it's been really exciting, I think, to be a part of that and try to figure out how we can apply it to order operations, our area, but also collaborating with our brands and partners and seeing how they're leveraging AI in these different areas of the stack.
Well, that's actually a great insight, which is at the end of the day, people are practitioners, right? So having, not only does doing the right AI project help the company you're with, but it actually kind of helps your brand as an individual. And we saw this in multiple waves with the integration wave, the internet wave, and other things. So that's a super interesting point. So let's kind of move on to the art of the possible. Looking forward, 3, 4, 5 years, whatever time frame you want, as it relates to operations, but in general, what do you think we're going to be able to do? And go as far out and as far out on the ledge as you can. So Zach, you go first.
Oh, wow. Okay. I love this topic, Mo and team, because I think it is a total mindset shift. And I may be totally wrong and my crystal ball is broken or leaking, but I'm just going to throw something out there to everyone to consider. I grew up in the AOL bubble and gateway computers and mobile phone in our hands. So that was my generation. So this whole wave of this technology that's come, and we still shop online. I go to a Foot Locker site when I want to buy sneakers, which is great. 4 or 5 years from now or so on, I think maybe the biggest wave may be an abstraction layer of commerce where it is mo.shop.com, and it's everything about Mo that you could want to know, your preferences, your style, where you shop, and all of these brands aggregate together. And that changes a lot of different dynamics, running the site, how much of the customer you own, and all of these aspects. But so if you assume something like that could come, it's a little bit of it's kind of there, and conversational commerce, social commerce, right? Like you see on an Instagram feed. But if you assume something like that's happening, then that changes a ton about how you broadcast and syndicate inventory and availability, how more accurate it needs to be and more real time it needs to be. Now it's 5 orders from one purchase from a customer going to 5 different brands. Does that show up in 5 packages or not? How do you afford to even do that? Who aggregates that? So if you assume something like I'm mentioning is true, kind of like this Amazon, if you will, without saying the word Amazon, then what changes? And then what has to be true to go make something like that happen? I think the consumer wants that. I want to be able to control my preferences and my data. And I want to see, for example, I'm going to a wedding in a few weeks, right? I want to see what a belt and the suit and the shirt all look like together. And I don't care. I care that looks good in the context of maybe seeing that on a PDP of me at that event with that combination. And I want to buy that experience. I don't want to have to go to 5 sites. So now, if I want that to be true as a consumer, and I think that is coming eventually in the next 5 to 10 years, then it just changes everything, Mo. The technology is not the inhibitor anymore. It's like who gets to that first, and then how quickly do other brands follow? I think that's the kind of out there thought that just totally changes ops and changes tech and inventory and. What do y'all think?
That's a great segue. I mean, look, the buying experience. I mean, that's really what you're touching upon. It's going to be radically different. We've kind of largely got used to the same buying experience, whether it's mobile or on the desktop. I mean, 20-year plus, and this is something entirely different. So, a lot of food for thought. Nick, what do you think? How's go out there a little bit further than you went on the kickoff? What do you think's possible?
So I'll sort of riff a bit on what Zach said, because there's a couple things that I've been chatting about with clients and really anyone that will listen. So I think the commerce layer actually changes, or evolves rather. I'm a huge proponent of visual search, and believe that we're moving in a direction with sort of norms changing and comfort in adoption. And so taking pictures of things that we like throughout the day, whether it's a water bottle, a shirt, glasses, an idea, and then searching quickly as we continue to sort of broaden bandwidth to get quicker memories changing in smartphones too. And so we just add to cart, add to cart, add to cart at the end of the day, right? We have a shared cart, and I'll give you my opinion as to who wins that battle in a second. But now you have $3,000 in your cart. You're like, wow, like I'm not spending $3,000. So you buy, you save for later. And I think there'll be features to go back to augmented reality where you're able to sort of put things together and understand. There'll be advancements in fit technology so that there's more of a customizable component, less meaning manufactured for you, more sort of marriage fit for you, this brand, this fit, because everyone has their standard blocks. So I think Facebook probably wins that battle as they're making this gigantic push into Facebook shops and creating a really significant commerce layer. And if they've proven nothing else, they've certainly proven their ability to be far ahead of the revenue curve and the consumer sentiment. And as a result of their sort of presence in so many people's lives, could they be the one that is able to somehow create the commerce layer that would serve this purpose? In addition, I would only say too that one thing people, in addition to logistics, don't fully understand is the cost of content and creative. And as an operator, I was always astounded at the cost of a model, the cost of a photographer, the cost of a location. And when you're dealing with certain level of talent, you're at a mid-market brand in the six figures. Those costs can largely go away. So I think that we're going to see in a peer-to-peer world where we're all building our own communities to pedal to per se, because you either trade in trust or price, and not everyone can trade in price any longer. So as we build trust and we build the ability to sort of, as brands, use intermediaries, people and small communities to build brand and trust, we're going to see the whole notion of sort of like content and change and distribution radically evolve as well. So I think that all of this, which again, like, I mean, I in the white paper, we talked a lot about the modern brand promise, meeting people where they are. And, one of the things I think Pipe does really well is Pipe 17 allows people not only to distribute from efficient places, but conduct commerce in a multitude of places. And so as we think about what's offered to us today, like that type of a solution, tomorrow it's going to go far further, inventory turns faster, and a lot of connection between disparate places that exist today. So commerce changes, it becomes far more evolved. Content changes, it becomes far cheaper and better and plentiful. And behaviors of how we connect with points of commerce change as well.
That's fascinating. I think the entertainment side, I mean, what you mentioned around Facebook is super interesting. I mean, it's there are multiple platforms that purport to do similar things, obviously Snap and TikTok. And one of the conversations I had with one of the industry leaders in the gaming space was around the importance of the user data, which kind of, I think, is something that you touched upon as well. So, Dave, what's going to be possible for those people who are running operations at these big and small businesses?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to think about the progression. So Sue's talked about starting with marketing and content. Nick, it's a little bit of what you're talking about there too, I think, which is it's kind of a no-brainer to leverage AI for content generation. Even today, it's, it'll be better tomorrow, but even today, like, that's there. And then Sue's talked about, getting to the back end supply chain and operations maybe next year. And so I'll start short term and then maybe go a little bit long term. So what's been interesting for us is, I think part of the reason for that is retailers can use tools like ChatGPT or Perplexity or whatever AI tools directly on the content side. But on the back end side, you really have to bake that AI into your applications and tools that you're using, unless you're going straight from like spreadsheets to AI for inventory management or something. But the reality is, people have inventory and order management systems today. They just want them to be smarter. And so I think in the short term, the opportunity is to make those tools smarter, make people more efficient in their jobs, and make the customer experience better, because every error that you reduce, every delay that you reduce is, turning a potentially unhappy customer into a happy customer. So, I think the short term is here today in terms of leveraging, those opportunities. We talk about that a little bit more in terms of what we're doing. We see configuration as a really painful task that takes time and knowledge, expertise. People end up having to write code. At the mid-market, people have all the same problems that enterprises do, but they don't have their own dev teams, things like this. So, it enables the person whose job it is to actually solve the problems that they're seeing today. So that, I think, is the short-term benefit, make them more efficient and lower the barrier to entry to be able to solve the entire problem. How do I set up order routing rules? How do I create special mappings, things like this?
Yeah.
Then I think longer term, like the revolutionary thing is, can you configure the entire system, at least in some default, maybe best practices kind of configuration, conversationally? Like things like that, are probably several years off, but would enable dramatic increases if people want to add new selling channels, add new fulfillment channels, things like that. That could be truly transformational to be able to do that kind of activity in minutes or hours, versus what's months today. But there's a lot of steps on the way there. And I think what's interesting is, the first steps already exist. I'm demoing our AI capabilities every day, and it's a little nerve-wracking because it is real, and it'll come back with different responses, sometimes, but 90% of the time it's really beneficial, and 10% of the time you fall back to what you were doing before, but that's already a great leap forward.
Huge uplift. And that's actually a great segue into going down from the I'll let AI show me a shoot of what I'll look like at the wedding with the suit and the tie, to what you're hearing people do today and what you're advising people to do. So Zach, you're obviously in a really interesting position on this topic as it relates to, kind of broadly speaking, like, where do I use AI? How do I optimize operations with it? Where do I look? What do I use? What are you hearing and sensing?
Yeah, the immediate is exception management that touches on the order. So that's the lowest hanging fruit. It's on the floor already, right? So, SLA is about to breach. Hey, this order's jumped through 5 nodes. You need to be aware of this. So that's reactive though, and it still pushes the decision to a human to intercept and to touch it. So that's a visibility solve, which is great. So check. Now, where do you go from there? Well, I don't want to have to be told that in the first place. The AI in the system, should have solved it for me. You should have gotten ahead of it. In fact, you should have automated an email to the customer. Sorry, this is going to be a day late. Or you should have accelerated the speed of delivery in balance with cost and an objective that a human had set months ago. So that's that next evolution is, okay, well, let the system get ahead of this before it's an issue, and make sure, to Nick's point earlier, like, okay, you got cost or price, and then you have the trust factor. So that reinforces your brand promise on a trust, and it does it proactively. I think then the third piece is what Dave was talking about. So someone that administers these rules, typically brands will set a heuristic rule, an if then else in order routing, and it'll be static. And they won't change it again until peak season, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and then they'll change it back and they won't touch it again until the next October. Okay, so these rules though need to be in balance constantly. And so the system should be actually adjusting dynamically the order routing, the order exception, and even the workflow itself, the business process itself, and only checking in with a human after. So that's that third evolution. So you kind of stack all of these. Now, do you jump to the third one and get the two on the way? Less likely. Most of the brands are at least saying, okay, let me stop the bleeding first. And so I think that's the evolution. I think the enterprise companies have a lot more money to throw at that. But I think someone mentioned it earlier, the mid-market has the same problems. They, like you said, they just don't have an army of, people to do it, or SIs that they can pay to go do that. So how do you solve it? Well, the answer is AI.
Yeah, and that's actually a kind of, ironically as it sounds, it actually creates a much more level playing field as a technology.
Oh, absolutely, Mo. Yep.
Good. Nick, you talked to lots of brands and retailers. Where are you telling them to focus? We're advising them to focus.
Well, we tell them. They don't know. They don't always listen. First, we're telling them to focus, because I think one of the things about AI is it has offered all of a sudden this proliferation into a realm of the unknown and the experimental, which is great. But what we do talk about is companies can have three priorities. And I think that AI needs to certainly be one of them. And so real application, and a lot of what I'm focusing on is helping people grow the customer file, right? The active trailing 12-month customer file is the value of a business, like that, period. And so obviously if you're growing in customer, whether it's existing or new, then your business is healthy. And so I think that places where AI can benefit is it can certainly now, with product descriptions and deep tagging and some of the solutions available to help search on site and off, and SEO improvement is one. I think it's simple. I think pricing and inventory optimization is two. There's plenty that people can do to predictively think through what turns need to be in inventory levels to drive the conversion. It's just math, right? Traffic comes from certain channels. It performs a certain way, times average order value, less discounts equals on hand, divided by turn for annual inventory investments. That's two. I think that I think it's kind of undervalued, but the continued sort of look at in media buying investments people are making, because the way you get a new customer is to NCAC, right? New customer acquisition cost. And so we're talking to people about thinking through ways that they can leverage the AI to better spend their money, right? And I think that that's something, I advise Power Digital, which is a great agency, and something that they're looking at as an agency as to how that's evolving their business and how they can work with clients to better spend money. So I think those are three simple ones. In addition, I think that there are tools out there. Another company I advise is Phoenix Commerce, and they have, EDD, right, which is estimated delivery date, and there's carrier rate shopping that they offer, and other tools that people can plug in quite easily, most who use Shopify, to benefit and drive incremental operating income and conversion. So I think that largely it's around tools providing better customer experience and personalization on site. It's about tools providing a better investment of dollars to drive inventory optimization or media that flows through to reinvest in growth, and starting to think about ways to enhance creative. I think that's the big one that's just not there yet. To go back to your reference of my beautiful Dolly diagram or chart or whatever you want to call it, and there was zero correct spellings of optimization actually. And it's amazing to me that with all that's happening, we can't figure out how to correct spelling in generative AI yet, but it'll happen. So those are some of the places, but I think largely what I'd say is I'm telling people they have to dabble in it and figure out kind of what it is. And that there is no silver bullet. It's not a panacea, but it's an important tool to be aware of and find easy applications to sort of improve your everyday existence and be very open to change, which for human beings, as one of my daughters this morning wants the bunk back bed that we got rid of 2 days ago, talking about averse to change. It's who we are. So be open to change is what I'm preaching mostly.
Oh, that's a profound one. Dave, what are you hearing, advising folks as they're saying where should they get started?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of areas to look at. So just focusing on the back end, I do think there's clear opportunities to take advantage of AI as it's being baked into tools and thinking about where people spend their time. Kristen put in a comment off of some of Zach's comments around how frequently people can change these order routing rules and algorithms and things like this. So I think really high value things today are if you can change that just by typing it in and then running a few tests, you can be much more dynamic. I do think the longer term dream is that dynamic nature can be baked into the AI as well. But step by step, the first thing is can you get from what you want to having that live more rapidly, and AI is a tremendous tool for that, for accelerating that process. I think there's also other sides to it, data analytics. Nick, you were talking about inventory utilization, making that more efficient. The first thing people do to do that is have single inventory pools versus these disparate inventory pools, but that introduces a bunch of challenges around overselling and things like this. And so AI is also a perfect area to watch for those dynamic conditions on your behalf, so you don't have to monitor them constantly.
That's definitely the case. I want to kind of intermingle some questions. There's a really interesting question that I've been thinking about as well. I don't know kind of who wants to take it from the audience. Questions, I mean, from the audience. But there's kind of a question roughly around like basically, AI with content. That's an area that, Susan Daniel spoke about, and using AI to generate content and how that takes away or detracts from authenticity of the brands. I don't know if anybody wants to touch upon that one, but that one's a really interesting question I've been thinking about because it does breed a little bit of homogenization. Who wants to talk about it?
I'll jump in. I mean, I think that it is a really difficult question. However, I think it's amazing. I think again, it is really difficult to compete in this arena today. And I talked before about sort of like, quality equals the intersection of price and trust, right? Like you have to be able to move on price, but you have to be able to build and trade in the currency of trust, and content does that. And it isn't, we're working with a client right now who's an amazing brand, a storied brand, but really struggles in the place where they're at the moment to create content. And should they be penalized because their operating overhead is bigger than their current state in terms of their ability to have free cash flow to reinvest into content creation? And they offer a wonderful product. And so do I think it takes with the authenticity? I do not. I think it is no different than creating media. I mean, and I think that companies today that don't view themselves as a media business, it's sort of like the ASOS quote, they're a tech company and a retail business, a fashion company. They're also a media company. And I think that these platforms that, Pipe 17 or Shopify or other solutions have provided access to allow commerce to happen where content is consumed is a big part of our future. These monolithic historical, like your ATG Oracles, these legacy platforms that people are still on that are very prohibitive are no longer the future. So I think that more power to you, my support for you, if you have the ingenuity to create world-class content using generative AI. I don't think that there's anything other than I am the brand, I am the soul of my brand, and this is how I view you viewing my brand. And it gives me the ability to make a movie. And so it's no different, in my opinion, than that. And so I'm fully in support. Don't think it degrades the brand at all. And I think it empowers them.
Yeah. I'll piggyback, Mo, if that just for a minute. Or Nick, excellent points. I'll say this much. There's the content around the product and fitment and user-generated content. So tying it back to order management for a second, right? This doesn't fit well. This typically shrinks, this cashmere sweater. So there's that sort of content, in a sense, the romance copy you see on a site, the visual content, obviously. So generative AI is heading there. I can start to contextualize that. Something, if you think about from a footwear perspective, is you have a wall of shoes. So there's an augmented reality piece where the content isn't just a picture you swipe through on a PDP. Your phone's the mechanism in those retail stores. And so I also think when we say content, I'm thinking also like an AR component. And so the example there in an order capture phase is you put the phone up to the wall and you can see the stock and you can say, hey, go grab that shoe from the back room and bring it to me. So when we talk about content, like we're talking about generating a lot of visual piece, but the written piece as a way to avoid returns, for example, or the augmented reality piece is important as well in terms of an order capture. So like it's an interesting conversation because there's a lot of ways to how you're looking at the content problem. And I think a lot of people just think about it in terms of what you see on a product display page alone. And so Nick, kind of evolving what you're saying, there's a big look-see at all of that. I think it's just getting tapped into. So it's a really good point you made earlier.
Great. Good. I think that's a great point, by the way. I mean, on talking about the returns, Zach, and, mining the data for why people return stuff and feeding that back into the buying process. I mean, that's content, but it's really data. Good. So let's kind of move on. So there's one topic that has come up a little bit, which is around people and organizations. And it came up earlier. Danielle talked about it. Sue's talked about it. You guys have talked about it, which is how should leaders think about this? Because obviously big change, potential to augment and help people do their jobs much more effectively. I think, 80 plus million jobs gone and 90 plus million created. That's one way to look at it. How would you advise, or what do leaders who are out there in terms of how should they think about organizational changes? Zach, why don't you start on this one?
First off, Mo, I'm loving this. My initials are ZZ, so I'm used to going last all the time. So, guys, so organizational change barriers to adopting the tech, that's obvious. So everyone gets that. I think in the context of order operations and order fulfillment, I think there's an aspect of you're still going to have all these, I want to say, disparate systems or bifurcated systems. You still need the supply chain wing, you need the digital piece, the content systems, the order management system. So how do you create and how does a user still administer and look over all of that and all of that data and how it interchanges and marries? I think there's an aspect organizationally of painting a picture of what the, I call it like the CEOX, customer experience, the employee experience, the ops experience. So I think a lot of people start at the C and they don't think about the employee experience of looking across all of these systems and how those systems interchange, demand planning and OM. So like pre-markdown, right? And so understanding the system sensing something's about to be marked down, feeding that to the OM and that auto adjusting the order routing rules as an example, Mo. So stuff like that has to be thought through, not from the customer experience first always, but the E and the O are their lowercase, and everyone puts the C as a capital C in terms of how they look at that. I think good leaders at these brands look at the E and the O as well, because if those are tuned and right, they make the customer experience greater, and that meets the brand promise and enables the trust. And then you go back to the conversation 30 minutes ago. It's like, okay, now then tell the system what you want to achieve. Even tell them from an ops and an employee engagement experience, and let that system best serve the customer, but profitably. And I think that's going to take us some time to get to, but that's the next thing. And it's all about a change management aspect at that point in terms of these leaders leading the E and the O in that example.
I love that COX acronym. Dave, what are your thoughts in terms of what are you hearing from customers as it relates to what do I have to do with my organization, or what does this change it?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think obviously at the macroeconomic level, I think people are concerned about these broad changes. But my personal experience is that at the individual organizational level, it's a tool. It's a tool to make people more efficient. Just using Pipe 17 as an example, we get support requests in from customers or into our onboarding team saying, "Hey, I need to change this mapping. My 3PL can't handle an order that doesn't have a first name. Can you make sure there's always, first name value, whatever?" And then we don't hire developers into that team, so that those teams would do the configuration. And when code needed to be written, we've got a person, he's in India, and they just create a ticket with the mapping required, and he writes the JavaScript, and it comes back. And that's not the most interesting part of his job. So the first step that we did was we started testing our own AI to just plug in for the support team to write JavaScript for them and to be able to give them test cases and things like this. The next step would be for customers to be able to just plug it in directly. And the really nice thing about this world is we've got these requests coming in constantly, so we can just test them out. The system can get smarter and smarter. We expose it to the customers, which we've now done, as soon as it's ready. But Sunil in India still has a job. He's got plenty of work to do. He's just not doing the least interesting part of his job, which was to wake up in the morning and write 10 JavaScript snippets for people. So I think at a macroeconomic level, it's impactful. I think at the organizational level today, it's an efficiency, it's an assistant. That's the perspective that we take for it. And I do think it's a career opportunity for people to, understand how AI applies across the whole gamut of commerce. Like, who's not going to want to hire a person like that? So I think it is good for people's individual brands too.
That's fantastic. That's very upbeat. Nick.
So I'll take it from the other side. So I think AI, one of the challenges we have as an industry is really as a society, and it's an existential question, is are we incentivized to work ourselves out of a job? The answer is no, we're not. And territorially, and more often, I think it's conditioned. If we give up members of our teams, we'll never get them back again. That's sort of the corporate culture. And so when tools like Pipe 17, and this is something I thought a lot about when writing the white paper, are available, and the audience getting that tool to solve that problem is the audience that would be most impacted from an HR perspective. Like, how does that happen, right? So CEO is looking to drive strategy and to drive efficiency, especially now in this age of efficiency. And how does AI do that? And I think you have to find that balance. And I think that's part of the grappling with this moment in time, which is where and how, what tools can we use, and how do we think through organizationally what evolution looks like, and culturally, how do we give the proper courtesies, transparencies, and realities of what tomorrow may look like, which is a very large, challenging topic. So I think that everyone that was a toll collector found a job, probably working often, I think, in back to school or going to an Amazon warehouse, right? And Amazon has built a huge labor force, and that's how disruption works. And while, you know, as a father of two kids, two daughters, young-ish, I would not want them to be software engineers. I think that that's an area where we're going to see a lot of disruption. And I mean, obviously, want to be able to let them, but, you know, whatever they think is best. But I think that I think AI gives us the ability to reset the organization, reset the priorities and the processes and the people, most importantly, that are a huge cost center, especially here in the United States as we globalize the workforce. And AI helps us do that. So I'd say that while the ability to use AI as a huge benefit and boon to a person's brand, and I'm a huge believer that you should always put you and your brand first ethically. But I also believe that as a leader, you are beholden to a shareholder or shareholders to drive the best results. And not only is that math giving you that incremental probabilistic improvement, it's helping you rationalize the organization and the right growth trajectory to be able to survive where the world of like cash is king. So I'd say it's going to beg a lot of difficult questions that I'm encouraging clients and people in my community to consider and be ahead of, because it's an opportunity, but it's a slippery slope.
It could be for sure. So great remarks. So with that, we have some questions which we'd love to take from the audience. One that always comes up: security, right? So what are some of the challenges, and what should people be doing to address them as it relates to adding AI tech into their business? Who wants to go first on this one?
Well, maybe I'll make one comment. I think it is really important for people to understand the implications of pushing your data into these, you know, LLMs and these, you know, large AI modeling systems. I think at the, you know, deep technical level, you know, people understand that, like dev teams, people are used to security audits and things like this, may have a better foundation for that. But it probably is something that as this technology becomes utilized by everybody, again, ChatGPT is here, like, you know, it's not going back in Pandora's box. People have to understand and I think train their employees on what it means to, you know, utilize those tools and what data is appropriate for that and what data you'd want to, you know, keep private.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, anyone that doesn't have a policy in place already, corporate policy needs one. And I mean, for example, like we use it a lot. I use it a lot. I never put a client's name in it. I never put names in it. It's always fictitious. But at the same time, to speak to what you said, Dave, I mean, I'm one who always sort of opts in to the privacy policy and lets my data be exposed because I want to improve the world, and I believe I'll benefit from it, but doing so with a mindful sort of eye. So I think you have to be aware of it because you are entering into a realm where it's out there.
For sure. Zach, are you hearing anything about security from the customers and partners you speak with? Is there concern there, or they trust the infrastructure and the software guys will get it right?
Maybe less an AI comment. consider the security risk of someone sabotaging which nodes of inventory are activated or not, or someone being able to tap in. I know I'm the OMS guy here, but shutting off all the inventory nodes, completely screwing up your order routing rules. If someone's able to break into the supply chain systems that operate your business, it will cripple you. So not about CrowdStrike and Delta, but if you think about the ripple of a one-time occurrence weeks later, think about what that could do to a retailer in terms of security violations. And again, it's less an AI comment, but I hear from some brands like, they really take a sharper eye nowadays to, given the change in architecture and all of these OMSs to be headless, like that's a concern, a legitimate one that brands have come to us and asked for perspective on. So how do you protect against that? And then the payment piece, and then obviously the customer piece we talked about, Dave and Nick. That's pretty risky stuff in my book.
So you better get it right. So one final question from the audience, because we want to close up on time. Biggest challenges in applying AI to order management and monitoring. What do you guys think? Who wants to go first? Dave?
I think I do think this is one, and I don't know if I'm colored by being, at a tech company. This is one that I do think at the back end gets baked into tech tools, whereas the front end people can use as first person utilizers. So, and I don't know that at the end of the day, I think the back end, you want to be better and more efficient. And whether it's AI that gets you there or intelligent algorithms, smart algorithms that aren't like AI, may not be that different. So I think really the question is figuring out where your opportunities for efficiency improvements could come from. And then on the flip side, there is an opportunity, I think, to leverage these tools, and people have to understand what they can do and what they can't do. And it's changing every day. So that's just staying engaged, I think, with the latest developments in this space, because it is moving so fast.
Cool. Excellent. Nick, what do you think? And I'll let Zach finish up.
Yeah, really briefly. I think it's HR, right? I think that people it's great to type things into a chat, like a generative AI tool like ChatGPT. It's a whole nother thing to build something that's used in everyday life. And then I think it's the partner side. Specifically to answer the question, the life cycle of an order is not single channel, right? It's multi-channel, multi-touch. And so you need partnership in terms of your distribution center or other providers, whether it's your tools, to work with you. And I think that there's some caution inside of an ecosystem as to how will revenue for providers, et cetera, be impacted by this. And so people are not acting globally often, they're acting locally. So I think that overcoming those obstacles and having the organizational bandwidth to sell that, right? Someone has to go out to the partner, have the conversation. And so these are really less about the technology and more about our ability to use, manage, and implement it, and then keep iterating on it. So I think that's really the biggest challenge we're seeing.
No, of course. And then to kind of close this session off, Zach, so you are appearing last, ZZ, in the group. So, being the OMS guru, what do you think?
I'll be real quick, Mo, because I know we're at time. I think the biggest challenge in applying AI in order management monitoring is that these operations teams still don't want to yield or don't trust the answer that a system will give. They still, to Nick's point, want to retain control. The market's still not at a point where letting just an algorithm decide the order routing and letting the business user understand and interpret why the decision was made. That's still a big barrier, and that's not even machine learning or AI yet. So if you start to let an AI control the order orchestration and the flow, giving and releasing the ability to interact with that, not for anything more than fear of the wrong decision being made, could again cripple NPS scores, CSAT, could knock customer lifetime value down the line. I don't think brands are ready to give that up, and until that's true, I don't think you're going to see a high level of adoption, even if the right tool sets are built by providers like you. That's going to be the biggest change barrier.
Oh, for sure. In the meantime, then, people will use AI teammates, which kind of helping them do their jobs, but they're actually kind of calling the shots. But control is the big thing. So look, thank you so much for all of you for participating in this really entertaining panel. A lot more questions we're not going to have time for. So with that, thanks from me and the audience, and back to Derek.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Such a great discussion. I really want to thank, I'll let you guys go as we go into our closing remarks.
Good to see you.